Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about why people are trashing so much on Highguard even though it's only been out for less than 2 days at this point. So to explain, basically the game was featured in the 2025 Game Awards and it was slotted in at the last slot of the showcase. So people obviously assumed it was going to be a pretty big deal because, like save the last for best and all that. That is until they saw it, because the game looked like more of the slop we've been getting from like bigger studios recently, and it was just kind of not really pleasing anyone. It wasn't really making that much of an impression. No one really cared too much. But then X Respawn devs, so maybe, but no, no. It dropped yesterday, and so to explain it, it's like a 3v3 FPS that uh yeah, I don't know how to even explain the game without just giving like some examples. There's a phase system to the game. Phase one, the reinforcement phase. So you basically just want to use your reinforcement
Reinforcing a
packs that
wall.
you get at the start to try and like slap them on the best walls and doors you can to slow the enemy down in the defense. It's quite a similar system to R6, where you have like weaker walls that can be broken by small arms explosives
Our
and certain
weekend
character
just planted.
abilities. You can reinforce the
Scanning
walls
for enemy.
to make them harder to break, but you can still get through them pretty easily. And most of the sieging equipment is very plentiful, so the walls don't really matter very much. For the attackers or the defenders, it's pretty easy to get through them. So I found this kind of pointless personally, but to each their own. This did kind of, disappoint me because I was looking forward to be able to like actually strategically defend the base, but I guess they weren't really too invested in the system. But anyways, then you go on to the next phase, which is basically a battle royale like looting phase, where you'll run around after the dome lets you out. You'll run around the main map and you'll loot like chests and mine these Vesper crystals, which are like blue crystal chunks, I guess. And you get weapons from the red chests, I believe, and then the blue chests will give you like certain siege equipments and armor. The Vespa you'll use in the store, which can be accessed from like either your base or there's a couple of stores. Well, there's quite a few actually stores like dotted around the map, probably more than there needs to be, and all the POIs and some random ones just at the edges and whatnot. So when you're done with that, the next phase will start in like I believe it's like a minute to a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes, where you'll run to get the Domebreaker, which is a sword that will start forming at one of the major POIs. You gotta run over there and wait like 60 seconds for it. It'll form and then you can grab it, run over to the enemy base, plunge it in their dome, and then it'll start breaking it down. And that will start the raid sequence, wherein the attacking team must break down the defending team's defenses, plant the bomb. Also like in R6. Sorry, don't know what that was. Then they must defuse it. If the bomb goes off on the main reactor, though, then that's it. Game's over. However, if it goes off on one of the two smaller ones, then the raid continues, and the attackers need to bomb one more reactor. Obviously, the big one or the small one, doesn't matter. But if the bomb doesn't detonate, or they don't end up planting, then the raid tower will eventually just go down, and the attackers will lose all of their respawn privileges, meaning the defenders are just on cleanup duty, they kill the remaining attackers, and then the raid is thwarted. The game falls back to the second looting phase. Oh, and just really quickly, if I hadn't made this clear, both teams are able to PvP each other the entire time they're at a base. Just so, like, as soon as the looting phase starts, when you're trying to grab the sword, all of that, everyone's like hunting each other down. And that's basically just the main game loop. There's not much else to it, really. The game just continues like that until you destroy the other's base. The loot does get more plentiful every time like a raid is thwarted and you go back and forth. For example, you start off with blue shield, then you get to purple shield, then you get like legendary shield, and the weapons become like significantly more plentiful. Like the first phase, you'll get gray and blue weapons at a chest, and that'll be mostly it. And then the second phase, you'll start getting purples and blues more commonly. And then the third one, you'll pretty commonly get legendaries just out of any old chest. And the shop will upgrade accordingly as well. So that's the like explanation part over. But, 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 But I do want to point something out, as I've seen a lot of people also having issues when the game first came out yesterday. There are quite a few issues and bugs that people have been having, like trying to load into games or being disconnected. So I'll just like pop up a couple I've had. So when I first started playing, there was like a very high chance you'd get a not enough players message. No normal people would join, so it would just be like that's that. You just wait, the game kicks you back into the lobby and you requeue. Oh, so this is the second issue. It's a disconnection issue, and it just sort of randomly happened out of nowhere, and I did get a warning for it, even though obviously it's not my fault. The server just died or something, I'm not too sure. It didn't happen too often, only like maybe 2 or 3 times, and only one in-game. The other times were just like when I was trying to load in or when I was in a menu or something, so it's not too bad, but it is just kind of annoying. So moving on to gameplay examples, here we have the character selection screen. As I said before, the devs are X Respawn, so it seems like they've just taken the same design from previous games and implemented it here, which, you know, it's pretty obvious. Then we move on to the map selection screen, which is just a basic voting system. Alright, so getting into the game here, I'm just gonna speed this up like 3 or 4x just so you can sort of see how the start of a match goes without, you know, waiting like 20-30 minutes. So this is just the reinforce phase. I'm walking around and reinforcing one of the points. I check the shop just to see what it is because it's random each time. And then we head off. This is like a little gated sort of loot room. It's got a reinforced wall on it, and I still have like, you know, level 1 gun, so it takes a second to break. I loot the room. I do get an amulet that gives me bonus materials. Um, Kill this guy, the help of my teammate. So throughout this match, you'll see me harvesting quite a lot of the Vespa, and that's just because of the amulet. Normally, I wouldn't harvest this much, as it's not really worth it. You get like 1 to 2 per hit usually. So we loot this middle room. We're here because the shield breaker was predicted to be here, so we're just waiting for it to form, as you can see in the top 30 seconds. And we are just posting up, waiting for it to come down. Enemy team's through there, so we're having a little scuffle. I was just kind of messing around with the rocket launcher. We're just going back and forth. They had an invis enemy, so we were just kind of shooting into the walls and everything, trying to figure out where they were. For a second, we take out 1 or 2 of them. You know, just nothing really happening. It's just kind of uneventful. So much to say. So basically we have the shield breaker now and we're just trying to get to base, but it's quite a large open stretch of field, and 2 of my teammates have snipers and I believe 2 of the enemy also had snipers, so they're sort of just sat there sniping. Someone sneaks up on me, I get taken out. There's no respawns right now because it's overtime, and the sword is going to, in 45 seconds, whoever's base it's closest to, it'll automatically just jam into them and start a raid on them. So teammates are just trying to get it as close as possible or put it in. They fumbled a little bit here. Usually, if there's 2 teammates alive, you can just run up, body block, and whoever's jamming it in there will get it in time. The other one didn't do that for some reason, but it's fine, as because it was closer in overtime, we got it regardless. So we start the raid here. This isn't the best example of a raid. My teammates were quite hesitant. I wasn't playing at my best, and we ended up sort of peppering them, not doing a whole lot. Teammate wasted their ult. We do get a plant soon, I think. Give it a second, respawn. Yeah, right as I'm going for this plant, I believe, yeah, they start planting just then on the other point, so I run over to them. I put my ult down, which is just a spawn point. I get taken out. Just watching teammates, they're holding the bomb. Then it detonates. So we've gotten one of the minor reactors. Now, it was kind of a mistake that they went for a minor one. I mean, I was also going for a minor one because I didn't realize that was also a mistake. We should have went for the main one because we've got the bomb on the second, but as we're waiting down, they end up getting a defuse. We plant again, and then they half defused it, but we managed to secure it. Just sort of trying to defend, hold the point. They're really getting us back. And I believe, yeah, they get a defuse right at the end. And then the siege tower is down, so even though I was mid-revive, because the siege tower went down, I don't get my revive. I have to wait till my team either plants the bomb and, you know, gets rid of that base, or they die. Like that. Now the raid has ended, and it cycles back to the gearing up battle royale, like looting phase, where we run through the map, loot up. As you see, the loot is definitely better. You're getting blues and purples very consistently from chests. And the shop, as you'll see in a second, is also better. There we go, it's mostly purples with a couple of blues scattered throughout. Not all of it's random. Most of like the weapons on the left are random. I think pretty much everything else is consistent. You can also see the shield breaker, just FYI, on the map. I'm not too sure why we weren't really on it, but I guess we kill some guys. There we go. The supply drop, I grabbed the big rig, and then we're running to the shield breaker, which is forming in 15 seconds, but it's right over here, and we just wiped them, so there's no real issue. And there we go. Now, I think what happened here, we were all kind of hesitating, um, and it's sort of turned into a bit of a stalemate, so it's just a bit of a back and forth between me and my teammates and the enemy team. They eventually get the shield breaker, we go out to stop them, and I believe we fail miserably, as you will see. Yep. So they plunged it in. Sorry. There we go. They plunged it in, and then the raid has started. So again, my teammate does waste her ult, just throwing the smokes down for no reason, really. I got 2v1'd. I died. They've planted bomb on our main core. We get the defuse off. Then we're just running around, getting kills and whatnot. They've got a bomb on A now, though. To be honest, I don't think I noticed that. It might have been a bit of a mishap there. I was too busy reinforcing and fixing the walls that they've broken and purging their spawn, but they did defuse without me anyways. So then we're just holding A. They managed to plant again somehow. Um, and then we get the defuse off again and continue defending. The raid's about to end in 30 seconds. So I start repairing, reinforcing, just scooting around, trying to find wherever they are. There we go, they're all dead, so I continue to repair the walls and reinforce. I believe I buy some, yeah, I buy some wall reinforcers here, so I can continue reinforcing up the base for the next raid. And keep going, yep. Then my teammates head out, so I don't want to be left behind. I follow them out. We're just loading up because this is one of the later phases, so there's plentiful purples and some good legendaries. And fight there, die to them, just watching the teammate, respawn in, go back to help. Now this is coming up on the glitch that disconnected me here, yeah, as you can see. I'm not sure why, but it just kicked me from the server. There was no option to rejoin or anything, and I did get a 1 out of 3 like sort of mark warning, like if you keep doing it, you get a punishment for it. Obviously I didn't intentionally do that. The game just, I don't know, maybe the servers are not so great at launch. Who knows? But that's that. That was that entire match, unfortunately. Said I wasn't able to rejoin or anything. So, without rambling, I'm going to try and give you my sort of like final thoughts. Obviously, just as my own personal opinion. I believe I played about seven-ish hours of the game in total, and all around, it was like a fairly enjoyable experience. It's something new, and although it doesn't particularly have too many of its own actual new elements, mostly just borrows from other games like, Battle Royales, R6 and whatnot. It did mix them in a way that was somewhat enjoyable. I think it could have been a really decent game, fulfilling a pretty fairly like medium-sized niche. If they really just like worked on a bit more individuality, maybe. But I think they've pulled a little bit too much from their previous games. Like, for example, the characters, some of them look fairly similar. For example, I believe there's a character called, Catalyst or something, I think she might be called. In Apex, she's a controller, I think. And she looks relatively similar to Tamara. They have relatively similar abilities. It's not all the same, but then you've got like Gilbertra and gosh, I don't even know the names of these heroes, but there's a couple heroes that share some similarities, and I think maybe they're not really super unique and interesting. There's not that much in the game right now either. There's a fair roster of characters, but they don't do very much. An example would be Mara's ultimate ability doesn't really do anything. It's not very useful most of the time. It has a very niche use case. The only reason I really like her is because of her regular ability, her Q, which gives either yourself or teammates a bit of overshield. So you can res someone, toss a bit of overshield to them, or you can just prolong yourself in a fight. Her passive, however, is kind of quite frustrating to use because it requires you to finish off people's souls after you kill them. The issue with this is that your teammates will constantly be stealing it from you because most people don't seem to bother, learning all the different characters and their abilities, even just, a quick like few minutes reading over them. So they might not notice that I need to finish my kills and they will just swoop in and take them because when you finish someone, regardless of what character you are, you get some shield back instantly. So it's great for doing it in the middle of a fight as long as they can't, push you because you can't cancel the animation. But I need to do it for my passive, which they probably don't actually know. So they swoop in and steal it, which is quite frustrating, making her passive a 50-50. Sometimes it's quite nice, sometimes it's useless because I can recharge a use of my orb, or it doesn't do anything at all if my teammates steal it. And the other characters have somewhat similar issues sometimes. The lightning rod guy, I forget what his name is, Atlas or something like that. He has some pretty like solid, decent abilities, and they are quite versatile. You can use them in attacking, defending, contesting areas. But a lot of characters sort of lack that. Like for example, the chunky guy, he has like a claw swipe, which you can use to leap, and then a shout ability, both of which you kind of have to be kind of close and let your guard down. It's not really worth it. The TTK is fairly high with most weapons, so you don't really want to be using abilities that are just purely for offense like that. They don't really work too well in higher levels of gameplay. But overall, I don't hate the characters. I just wish they were a bit more varied and had a bit more like individuality away from the previous games, as they really just remind me so much of like Apex and Titanfall and whatnot. The movement isn't bad. I do notice it's a bit weird though. Like you can bunny hop with a horse, which is fun, but maybe not the most immersive. I'm not too sure on that. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good. I just think it's funny. You can kind of bunny hop without your horse as well. With or without, it's about the same. There is also a climbing. It feels a little jank and slow though, if I'm being honest. You don't really use it much at all ever, to be honest. There's not a ton of verticality to the maps, actually, surprisingly enough. They are quite flat and spread out. Just like my girlfriend's breasts. For all intents and purposes, that was clearly a joke. I obviously don't have a girlfriend. Speaking of the maps, moving on to those, I think there's a decent enough amount of them, but I do think it's kind of confusing because they don't specify that there are maps like that. The way they say it is choose your base. And how that actually works is that there's a couple of different maps, and each map has a different base. Both the teams have the same base. So you both choose the map, but the way it phrases it isn't choose a map, it's choose a base. So it's a little bit weird in that aspect. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something. It's totally possible. But either way, I do think the maps are fairly decent. You can traverse them very fast, though, I will say. It feels almost like sometimes it should be maybe more of a 5 or a 6v6. Sometimes it feels like the 3v3 works fine. It's kind of iffy. I will say, I feel like for a game where defending and attacking in raids is kind of a big factor, I kind of wish it was maybe a 4 or 5 or 6v6, just because it grants more of like a cool raidy feeling rather than an elite squad like infiltrating the base kind of thing and just waddling through the defenses. As I said before, there's not really much in the way of defenses. Like one rocket hit, just slam the wall down, out you go in, you can just spray another wall down with a mag and a half or something, and can use your axe melee. It's really just not a whole lot of resilience. There's no like turrets or traps. Maybe they add them in the future, but as is, there's nothing apart from just walls and doors, which aren't exactly the coolest ways of defending, really. You know, I'd like to see some turrets, maybe like little minions and traps. That kind of thing would be cool. Oh, and also one last little thing about the game. There is currently a really weird feature where if you slide, you have toggle crouch, and it doesn't put you back up automatically. So you have to uncrouch yourself while sliding, which is kind of strange because if you don't, you slide and you stay crouched and lose all your momentum, which is a really strange way of doing that for the game it is. I mean, movement is kind of emphasized. Um, so I assume that's a bug. But anyways, that's enough talking. Thank you very much for watching the video. Please let me know your thoughts if you have any in the comments. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. And please do consider subscribing if you at all enjoy my content. I'll see you later. Thank you very much.